Bienvenue au balado Jeunesse de Four Corners. Je m'appelle Nathaniel Bronner, je serai l'animateur de ce balado-ci, et pour me décrire un petit peu, je dirais que je suis un artiste qui est absolument partout. Je fais autant karaté que musique, écriture, puis je tripe sa vie. Aujourd'hui, on va parler de 2SLGBTQ+, avec Mollie Lauzon-Schlachter, qui est notre experte et qui va nous permettre de répondre à plusieurs questions que beaucoup se posent mais n'osent pas poser. Bonjour Molly, merci d'avoir accepté notre invitation.
Bonjour, ben merci à vous pour l'invitation.
Pour commencer, pourrais-tu nous dire qu'est-ce que tu fais, où est-ce que tu travailles?
Well, my name is Mollie Schlachter. I use she, her pronouns, and I work at the Dispensaire. The Dispensaire is the health community center based in St. Jerome in the Laurentians. And we serve the whole territory around like the Laurentians from Mont-Laurier to Saint Eustache. So that's very huge part of the Laurentians. And basically, we offer anonymous STBI testing services for everyone. So, sexually transmitted and bloodborne infections. Our services are free for people who do not own Medicare cards as well. So it's very important for either people who are newly arrived in Quebec or people who are homeless. So the services still remain free without the Medicare cards. Our main mission is to reduce STI transmissions in the Laurentians, but we have a very specific approach towards HIV positive folks. So our organization is now 30 something years, I think like 30 or 31 years old, when having a HIV positive diagnosis was a death sentence. So our services obviously were modified and adjusted to the reality of HIV positive folks now. So we help them throughout their diagnosis, treatment, and also psychosocial needs. We have the clinic on one side and the psychosocial part on the other side. We distribute free safer sex material, so condoms, lubes, dental dams. We also give out sterile drug administration material, whether that be for smoking drugs, injecting, or inhaling. So we help people to have access to sterile material in order to reduce STBI transmissions and for people to have better health. And we also do drug testing to reduce. It's actually it's a preventive approach to overdose caused deaths. So we also distribute naloxone and training in such way. And finally, our other program is the LGBTQ plus program. We have one coordinator in that program and also two other workers who help out queer people from 14 and plus. We also meet with younger kids, but we accommodate with the parents and everything, because under 14 years old you need the parents' approval. So we help out people if it's regarding questioning about their gender, sexual orientation. So we give out a lot of information and help people in their whole questioning phase. And then if someone is ready to take the next step and start, let's say, a transition, if we're talking about either non-binary or trans folks. So if it's regarding paperwork, we can help them filing out all the papers. That can be very mentally draining to do on yourself. So that's one of our roles. We also offer emotional and psychosocial support throughout the transition, because that can take transition is something that can be very heavy mentally. You go through a lot of changes, and it has an impact also on your relationships around you. So if you have needs regarding, let's say, consultations with your parents. We can help with kind of like mediate and give out information to the parents to help them be better informed and have a more just a softer approach and to accompany their kids the right way. So that's pretty much it. And we also offer conferences and trainings in all our fields of expertise. So whether that be sexually transmitted infections or everything that's related to harm reduction and LGBTQ realities at large.
Starting with the LGBTQ acronym, what do the letters mean?
All right, that's a good question. It's a question that often comes up. People are like, I can't figure out this acronym. It's so hard to remember. Well, first of all, the most important part to remember is that there are so many letters because it allows everyone to feel included. It gives visibility to as many realities as we can, and it gives a sense of validation to people that identify as a member of the LGBTQ community. And another thing that's pretty important is to remember to include that plus at the end. So we often hear like LGBTQ plus or LGBTQIA plus. The important part is just to remember to include that plus to it's just like a statement to inform that there are more realities, that it's not just LGBTQ. So that's what I have to say on that. If you want me, I'll tell you all the letters of the acronym, or
Well, you could, yeah, for sure.
all right, so L is for lesbian, G is for gay, B bisexual, T for trans, and then the Q is either for queer or questioning. If we follow through, there's the I, that's for intersex realities. LGBTQ. A is for asexual, and then there's the plus, or you can either add at the beginning or the end 2S, that's for two-spirit. Two-spirit is for Indigenous realities, people that experience gender differently as cis people. So, but it's a very it's not a way of describing all the reality, like the 2S, the two-spirit. There are many more words that we could use, but for white folks or people that are not of the Indigenous communities, I guess it's just simpler to say that, but we shouldn't just stick to that word, according to me, but at least it gives visibility to Indigenous realities.
So it's important to make efforts to make sure to pronounce them correctly and add the plus at the end, because that's just giving people the respect of recognizing who they are. Quelle est la différence entre sexe assigné, expression de genre et identité de genre?
That's a very, very good question. So there are 4 components to sexuality. Those components are not influenced by one another. They are completely independent. All right, so I'm going to break them down, but it's very important to remember that they do not influence each another and every one of them. So first of all is the biological sex, or sex assigned at birth. And that relates to the physical and hormonal characteristics that we are born with. So basically, when a baby comes out of a stomach and the doctor says, oh, it's a little girl, oh, it's a little boy, well, they're going to look straight at their genitalia and determine if they are either F or M. But biological sex is actually a spectrum that goes from male to female, passing through intersex people. All right, so everybody is placed on that spectrum differently. And if we would take a test and a blood test, all of us that are around the Zoom, we would all be placed on a spectrum at a different place, even if we have more of a male presenting body, and that people would be like, which is based off your physical characteristics, people would say, well, yeah, you're a man. But that does not mean that the hormones in your bodies are like 100% male. If I can explain it, like just simplify it a bit, that's what I could say. So like,
Okay.
yes, biological sex, usually we will fit in one category, but it is a spectrum. It's not solid coulé dans le béton. Then we have a sexual orientation, and that is who we are attracted to, whether that be sexually, emotionally, or romantically. So that's who we want to have a connection with. Then we have gender identity, and that's how we experience gender. So that happens in our body and our minds. That's with, like in relation from us to us. It's how we feel and identify as. We are the only one that can perceive our own gender, so nobody can perceive your gender just by looking at us, all right? So it's very internal, and it's how you experience gender. And lastly, we have gender expression, and that's how we relate to social stereotypes. So it's how we present ourselves to the world. For instance, we associate skirts with women. So if you want to have more of a feminine gender expression, you could wear a skirt. But skirts are not reserved to men, women, or non-binary people. But if you wear a skirt, people will immediately think, ha, woman, all right? But a cis man could wear a skirt and still have more of a feminine gender expression. Same thing with nail polish or having a beard. There are certain women that have mustaches and beards, but they still are women. You know, so that's what I meant at the beginning, saying that the components do not influence one another. You can be assigned male at birth, be pansexual, have a more of a masculine gender identity, and still feel like a woman in your gender identity. All right, so there are as many possibilities as there are of people. If you understand correctly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually. Yeah, that does. And I think it's really interesting that those components don't affect each other. I never heard the fourth one, so that was kind of a revelation for me. I don't know if any viewers felt that way. What's a non-binary person?
All right, so a non-binary person is a person who does not fit in the gender binary. Binary means two in the math world or something. I didn't study in math, so like forgive me if I'm not explaining this correctly, but binary means like two. So like bisexual, for example, is being attracted to two genders. A binary person is a person who fits in the binary world that we constructed. So basically, binary means female or male. If you are binary, you fit in those two categories. And even if you're a trans person and you go from female to male, you still went to one binary to another, okay? And a non-binary person is a person who finds themselves inside, outside, between that binary world.
Peux-tu expliquer les personnes intersexes?
Yeah, I can explain. I'm not like an expert, but I can tell you the basis of what intersex means.
Okay.
So an intersex person is not on either side of the male or female biological spectrum. So like I said, they won't find themselves at the extremities. So I mentioned that if we took a blood draw of everyone here, we would all be on the spectrum at someplace different. When we talk about intersex people, we often talk about people that we can see it visually that they are intersex. So the example I often give is like Mollie. Mollie, we're gonna say political personality, and she has a mustache. All right, so she would be an intersex person, being that she has more testosterone in her bloodstream. Testosterone is the hormone that we relate to male people. And testosterone is responsible for having like hair on your body. That's why men have generally like a beard or just more hairy at large. So let's say Mademoiselle, that's a woman, has a bit more testosterone in her bloodstream, so develops a bit of a mustache, maybe a bit of a beard, okay? But a person that is intersex, it can be related to their chromosomes. So we have the XX chromosomes that are associated to female, and then we have the XY chromosomes that we associate to male. Certain people have variations in those chromosomes. So either it can be XXY, XYY, or just X. It can, but that's like a biological, biology class.
Yeah, biological class. Yeah.
French and English. So that's kind of like the simplified explanation. And it can, like I said, it can also be related to the hormone levels in someone's bloodstream. So we have the 3 sexual hormones: estrogen, testosterone, and progesterone. So it can be a person that was assigned a man at birth and has a bit more estrogen in their bloodstream and will develop mammary glands. All right, so develop a bit of breasts. That can also happen. As a result, intersex people can also present ambiguous genitalia. So that can be that develop characteristics, sexual characteristics associated with both genders. So it may be someone that has a vagina, a vulva, but has a very large clitoris, kind of resembling a small penis. That could be an intersex person as well. There's going to be like ambiguous physical characteristics with their genitalia. And we've heard about a phenomenon called intersex surgeries, which consists of removing or kind of like rearranging parts of babies' genitalia when they are born. But there are risks associated to such surgeries, whether that be impact on like physical sensations or on the mental health of the person, because we don't know what the child will decide 20 years later from that. And deciding at their place can be a traumatic experience for intersex people. And the thing is, though, certain of those surgeries are irreversible. So if you arrive at an age where you can decide for yourself, but your parents already decided for you, and that's not what you would have wanted, it can be very dysphoric if, let's say, the person is like trans or non-binary. Yeah. So it's just something to have in mind.
Can you explain the difference between binary person and bisexual?
A binary person is a person whose gender will fit in the binary system, and so that's related to your gender, your identity, gender identity. And someone that's bisexual is related to your sexual orientation, so someone who's attracted to two genders. So it's the bi, that's the same word in those two words, the first part of the words, which means two. So, but it's not the same, it's not associated to the same sexual components. One is the sexual orientation, other gender identity.
So the sexual components are really important overall.
Yeah, it's pretty much like the basis of it all. And we often assume by seeing one of those components, we assume the rest of them. Let's say like a woman that has a bit more of a masculine gender expression, we're going to assume, oh, like she's a butch, like she's a lesbian, you know? So that's an association that we make, but it's not necessarily true, right?
Yeah. What does gender fluid mean?
Gender fluid is it falls under the non-binary umbrella. So like I mentioned earlier, non-binary people, certain of them will feel part male, part female, and certain people will change throughout their life, and they're going to have fluctuations in their gender. So someone that would describe themselves as gender fluid is a person who experiences gender as a continuously moving concept. So certain days they will tend a bit more towards a female energy, and another day a bit more masculine.
Are two-spirit people only living in Canada? And how do we call Aboriginal people who are LGBTQ+ and are living abroad?
That's a good question. So Two-Spirit is more of an appellation that we have for North American realities. Indigenous communities around the world have their own ways of describing gender identity, because, like I said, a Two-Spirit is related more to the gender identity part that I explained earlier. But as a non-Indigenous person, I'm not really in a position to talk more about Two-Spirit realities. But what I can say is that there are communities out there in the world, in other Aboriginal cultures, who have their own ways of experiencing gender. And I'm going to give an example. There's the Muchi. It's a Zapotec culture in Oaxaca in Mexico. So the Muchi are a community of non-binary people that live in the Zapotec tribe. So they have their own ways. Basically, they have their own word to describe non-binary, which is Muchi. So if you look it up, we write it Muxe.
Okay. So it's different. That is really interesting.
Yeah, there are a lot of Indigenous communities out there in the world who have been living a non-binary life like throughout the years, and it's actually something very colonial that we instaured, and that we now have the male and female boxes. So yeah, Indigenous cultures have a lot of history with LGBTQ realities and accepting LGBTQ people, which we are having a bit more trouble in our Occidental culture. But that's another subject.
That's a really interesting thing, that it's so universal that there are non-binary people, and that binary is not universal. I think that's pretty interesting.
It is. It makes you think of the way we've been like living life and everything. There's and like those cultures, there's a place for people who are binary, and it's just there's a place for everybody. So
yeah. And it's important, if you see that there's not that place, it's important to make it, I guess. Quand est-ce qu'on a commencé à utiliser le préfixe cis à l'opposé de trans?
Oh, okay. That's a good question. Actually, the prefix cis and trans have existed forever, because they are not specific to LGBTQ realities. Actually, trans is a prefix that means to go from one point to another. So, for example, transporting someone, taking someone or something from one point to another, the Trans-Canada Highway that goes from one point of Canada to the other. So cis, on the other hand, means that stays in one place, that does not change. Okay. So these prefixes existed before we started talking about gender identity. So yeah, we basically associated to gender, so to say, like cisgender or transgender, someone that's, for instance, I'm cisgender. I was born assigned female and I feel like a woman, so I stayed in one place. I did not transition.
Est-ce qu'il y a un consensus à savoir il y a combien de communautés 2SLGBTQIA+ au Québec et au Canada?
That is so hard to determine. There are a lot of surveys that have happened around Canada and Quebec, but what's difficult to determine is that there are different social contexts in which people will decide to not disclose that they're part of the community or not. For example, if you, because of like family dynamics, certain people won't speak up about it, or certain people are still in the closet, like we say. So it's kind of hard to determine, and there are more and more people who are open about the fact that they have a bit more fluidity in their sexual orientation than they would have thought, because now that the subject is out there, people are starting to realize that, all right, well, this is like, I can allow myself to also explore, and I can allow myself to also step out of the boxes I was put into. So the more we go on, the more and more people are speaking up and disclosing or, talking about the fact that they're part of the community. But according to a survey by the Jasmin Roy Foundation in 2017, the community represented, I think, 13% of the population. But like I said, that number represents people that are like out of the closet.
Yeah.
And in 2017, I mean, it's starting to be a while ago, like 5 or 6 years or so. But certain surveys say like 50% of people, and like there are a lot of different numbers out there.
Yeah, so c'est dur d'avoir un consensus parce que c'est tellement un sujet touché, dans le fond, pour beaucoup de gens qui peuvent pas vraiment le dire, dans le fond. T'sais. Mais je trouve ça intéressant que plus c'est connu, plus il y en a juste parce qu'ils découvrent, OK, en fait, c'est ça que je suis. De la même manière que, genre, on pense toutes que le monde se douche de la même façon que nous. Ça n'a pas en tout rapport avec le sujet, là, mais tant que tu parles pas avec d'autres gens, tu penses que tout le monde fait comme toi. Fait que tu réalises pas que, wow, OK, il y a d'autres réalités qui existent, puis peut-être que ce mot-là fit plus avec ma réalité que cet autre mot-là. Ah. Et les couples polyamoureux seront-ils bientôt reconnus légalement au Canada?
That like I don't have a lot of information on that, but what I can say is that there are certain provinces in Canada that recognize more than 2 parents on birth certificates.
Okay.
So I know, for instance, there's Ontario and British Columbia where you can have up to, I think, like 4 parents written down on the birth certificate. That's a piece of information I have, but I don't have any more information, unfortunately.
Est-ce qu'il y a une initiative pour créer un groupe de support ou une organisation qui est pour les 2SLGBTQIA+, individus des Laurentides?
Yeah, so we have different groups. The Dispensaire is one of the only 2 organizations that helps LGBTQ people in the Laurentians, and like I mentioned, from like Mont-Laurier to Saint-Eustache, which is huge. And the Dispensaire actually does not have any funding regarding the LGBTQ program, which is outrageous. But there's also the Jeunesse Thérèse de Blainville that offers LGBTQ support. So we are the 2 only organizations, and we collaborate together on les groupes Allo. So you may have heard of les groupes Allo in the Laurentians. They are LGBTQ plus support groups that occur once a month. We have a Facebook group on which we post the groups in the following month. So we do a little ad on Facebook, so you can keep yourself up to date on the next groups. The youth groups are at the Maison des Jeunes de Blainville once a month, and there's also another group at la Maison des Jeunes de Sainte-Adèle once a month. So we have 2 groups for the youth program, but in 2 youth groups, youth centers, different youth centers. Then we have the Groupe Allo for people that are 18 and plus, that goes until like 60, 70, 100, whatever. You can join us, feel free. We are very open. And that group occurs at the Carrefour Jeunesse Emploi de Thérèse de Blainville. So that's pretty much it. But no, there's also the Groupe Amalgame that is also a LGBTQ plus group. I don't remember how often they meet up, but if you call the youth center in Saint-Eustache, or if you go on their Facebook, you can also find the info on there. And finally, there are like various LGBTQ plus associations in the Laurentians, like in schools. So there's Lionel Groux, the CJEP in Sainte-Thérèse. I know there's in Oka, the Oka High School, they have a LGBTQ plus association, and there is the Gay and Straight Alliance in Lachute. at LRHS that has also an association. The only thing to check is if it's like a support group or more of activist group or just like social meeting groups. For the Groupe Allo, I'm actually one of the hosts on the group with my colleague Dylan, and we usually just like have conversations. We inform the group on different realities, LGBTQ realities, and we also just like discuss, have a good time. And it's really for youth to meet together, create friendships, and build a support group all together, and in a safe space, basically. And we also invite and are open to allies. So not just exclusively LGBTQ plus youth, but also their friends if they want to come that are allies and want to contribute to a safer world.
You talked about youth getting together to laugh and have a good time and bond. Is there a group for 2SLGBTQIA plus peers who want to practice winter sports in Merci, Pays d'en haut?
Not to my knowledge.
Oh no!
Not to my knowledge, unfortunately. And
That's unfortunate.
I spoke with my colleagues to like get a bit of input on that. No, my colleague Nicholas, who's the coordinator of the LGBTQ plus program at the Dispensaire, didn't know any groups either. So if they don't know any groups, I was like, all right. They're like, they've got all the info usually.
So if someone feels like starting one, that would be pretty cool, I guess.
That would be really cool. And also one thing about practicing sports and LGBTQ plus people, it can often be dysphoric for trans youth to like practice not necessarily winter sports, but just like sports like in the gym or stuff like that, because their body makes them feel dysphoric. So that can be a barrier to practicing sports. And well, if you go and like train yourself at the gym, like the private gym, that can be very stressful for anyone, but especially LGBTQ plus people, because you're usually surrounded by people that are like really in shape and that have like really big muscles, and like LGBTQ plus people are also in shape. But what I mean is that sometimes if we go with like the stereotypes, there can be like jocks or like, you know, like the very like manly man that goes to the gym, and that could be like intimidating or stressful. And for myself, I'm like, I went to the gym twice and I was like, this is so not for me. Like that, like I feel so weird, and like I feel like, you know, you don't want to be watched or looked at. Like actually like an LGBTQ plus peer group that just practices sports is amazing. I know they have in Montreal. There's a group of femme organizations for like people who present themselves as feminine. They go running in Parc La Fontaine every week, every Saturdays. I don't remember the name, but that is so cool. It's like
So
you can just like feel safe.
All right. Well, thank you very much. That's all the time that we had, but we learned a lot today. Yeah, that went so fast.
Oh my God. That's right. I hope I answered correctly.
Yeah. Your answers made a ton of sense and made me understand a lot of things that I didn't before. And I'll mostly be remembering the 4 components because they explained so much and they are very valuable information that I wish I had sooner. So thank you very much.
Well, you're welcome. And you can also check out, if you need any more resources, there's a Interligne. That's the provincial hotline for LGBTQ plus people. So if you're either in distress or just need to talk, it's important you can give them a call. They're around the clock hotline right now, but only until the 5th of November. Afterwards, it will only be open during the day. So you can check out interligne.co, and they also have a texting service if you don't feel comfortable calling. So be safe and take care of yourself.
Merci Mollie. Au nom de l'équipe de podcast Four Corners, nous vous remercions pour votre attention. N'oubliez pas de vous abonner au podcast et de vérifier le lien sur www.fourcorners.org Aussi, nous ne recherchons plus de nom pour le podcast, alors si vous avez des idées, c'est malheureusement trop tard. Par contre, nous vous conseillons de les recycler pour un futur projet. Et n'oubliez pas d'envoyer vos commentaires et vos questions à ivan@fourcorners.org. Et là, je précise parce que je me suis mêlé plusieurs fois, corner, ça prend un K, pas un C. Demandez-moi pas pourquoi, c'est plus beau de même. Et finalement, Four Corners Youth Podcast est un projet créé par Four Corners, réseau communautaire des Laurentides, soutenu par le réseau de développement régional. Nous remercions Patrimoine canadien ainsi que le secrétariat aux relations avec les Québécois d'expression anglaise pour leur financement. Restez à l'écoute. Prenez soin de vous.